Hi, I'm Denise Leroux from the Amherst Quilters Guild. I'm here to demo the pineapple trim tool by Creative Grids. In the process, I tend to get prepared by cutting all my strips, and I've written up the measurements that will help you and some instructions so that you can follow along. You don't have to, rewind the video and keep referring back to it. Once you get the process down, you won't need the video. So the easiest thing for me to do is to prepare all my strips in advance, get them ready so that it's just mindless sewing. Not so much mindless cutting, but mindless sewing. I'd like to thank Kathy for asking me to do this video because it has been a learning process for me to film, edit, add text, voiceover. I feel like I'm making a real movie here. It's taken me a little while. It's been frustrating at times. I wish I had a blooper reel for you because God knows it's pretty amazing what I've gone through to get to this point. Between the camera falling down, the this falling down, the lights going off, I swear my house is haunted. But we've made it through. The video is done. And if you want to take a nap, it's about 18 minutes. You can come back after, have a little snack, enjoy your friends with you. But I thank you very much for asking me to do the video. I hope it's not too boring for you. And I hope that someday you can get the ruler or borrow a ruler and make your own blocks. Thank you very much. Please remember, when choosing your fabric, good contrast makes all the difference in this block. There's a phone app called Layout. It enables me to preview a block into a quilt to make sure I like the contrast and the design. Here are 4 blocks in black and white, using that app to check for contrast. The block on the right has very little contrast. That red block in black and white, all that work did not pay off. Here are some blocks showing good contrast. First up, Karen Martin. Next is Diane Trottier. A quilt top done by Diane Ayotte. And finally, a completed quilt by Yvonne LeBlanc. I love how she placed her corner units to make the center a little more dark and showing good contrast throughout the quilt. In order for me to be most effective, I set up a pressing station, my sewing machine. I also use a little seam roller if I don't want to get up and press every seam. Mostly I'm prepared by using the design board. This has made a tremendous difference for me so that I can lay out 4 blocks at a time. I'm only showing 1 block laid out right now, but I usually mix and match all my pieces based on what pops up in the sewing process. I also have my rulers handy, my directions, because sometimes I forget where I am, even though I've done a few of these blocks. This is the baggies that I use to store all my pre-cut pieces. It is not necessary to cut your pieces ahead of time. Some people use jelly rolls, some people use long strips. I tend to pre-cut mine because I'm using scraps and I like to press them and sort them according to light and dark and the size. You'll notice I have a lot of the dark pieces up there. Those are the biggest pieces that I cut, because if I need smaller pieces in the dark, then I'll just take from that pile. I have my corner units ready to go. So basically I can just pick up a baggie and use my design board, set it up, and sew. So next up will be showing you how these blocks are trimmed so you can get your own started. Next up, we start sewing. The process is take a center 2.5 inch square and attach it all the way around with your strips. Each strip should be 2.5 inches by at least 2 inches. You sew one side and then the opposite side. And then after that's done, we'll sew the 2 other sides, press, and then trim. Using a good 1/4 inch seam will make the difference, because when you start off right, you continue on the rest of the way, pressing out and adding more strips. Basic sewing, don't need a fancy machine, just straight stitching, a good 1/4 inch. You don't have to be really precise either as far as matching seams. Just make sure that your center square is covered with fabric. Now we're going to press away from the center. Finger press to start, and then once all the sides are done, I'll give it a good press. But basically, from now on, we press from the center outward. Again, using a 1/4 inch seam all the way around will make your life a lot easier. Since I use mostly scraps, I kind of pick and choose where I go with my lights and darks, and hopefully nothing will be the same, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. You see, I flipped it over so that I can make sure that I'm covering where I need to, and that we're not sewing the whole length, we're only sewing what we need. So some of that fabric won't go to the ends of the previously sewed item. It's just to encase it near the seam and make sure that we'll have a space to line up your ruler and then trim. Finger press, good enough for now, and then add your final piece on that one side. Notice that that piece is wider than 2 inches, but it's what I had on hand. Rather than trim it in advance, I'll trim it with the ruler and move on. Nothing has to be backtracked or backstitched or knotted because it'll all be covered again with another seam. Press it good. Now we're on to the next step. Here we are getting ready to cut round 1. As you can see, I have my block done, my ruler ready, and I have to center the white square in the middle of my center square and the center line going through the middle also. So I have that's my first round, number 1, in white, and that middle line going through the middle at opposite ends. And then I will cut the excess off. You are dealing with a lefty here, so bear with me. Welcome to my world. Just make sure that that line is centered so you keep everything straight from the very beginning. And cut, and hope that your rotary cutter is a little sharper than mine. After this round, I changed my blade. Nothing more frustrating than cutting and nothing happening. All right, we're going around the same area in this block, lining up that white square that says number 1, the line through the middle, hoping that everything lines up well, and then we cut. Turn it around and repeat. We line up, again, square, center, keep going, cut. And the final round of cutting. And there you have it. Round 1 is done. Ready on for number 2. Okay, with the green background, I think it might be a little easier to see where I was doing in step 1. This was my white center square that I placed here. And then the center line going through will go through the diagonal of each section, so that when you're kind of lining things up here, this line, this white line, these white lines should be here, and the center obviously was here. Now we're going on to round 2. We'll trim that up. Round 2, well, all the even numbers 2, 4, 6, and 8 are using squares. All the odd numbers will be using this line. I'm going to be demoing a few of these cuts, and then I'll kind of race through the others with the camera so they're not watching me muddle through everything. So on to round 2. So this is number 1. This is round 2. So we've already cut 1. Now we're going to cut 2. Now 2 is here. You place your number here into your center, and then we'll cut here and here. And then we'll flip it around. Reposition your square as best you can, because sometimes it's a little off. It's a little off here, but we're trying. And then we'll center it with that center line, and you see you have your 2 white lines. It's kind of hard to see here, but you have 2 white lines here on your seams. So hopefully, if we keep going in this direction, we'll have a lovely block. And on to round 3. All right, on to round 3. If you're not sure, I always count, because I don't want to mess it up lining something up on the wrong square. So I avoid that, and I count 1, 2, and 3. And I'll be doing that throughout because I don't want to mess it up. And here is our line for round 3. All odd numbers start with that line. So we put our line on the last line we did before adding this row. So it's right across here. We're going to move that over to center it, straighten that line, and we're going to cut. We're going to do that all the way around again. So center that line, this line on the last row that we did before this one, center that line. Again, same thing. Line on the last row before this one, center the line, and trim. Center. And you'll see here, if you look, you can kind of see the lines here. Try to keep them all somewhat straight. Okay. So there's round 3, all squared up. A middle, a light, a dark, a light. Next up is a dark, round 4. You add 4 3/4 inch strips all the way around. And here we are with, by the magic of television and preparation, here's round 4. Again, center, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 3/4 inch strips of the dark. So 4 is an even number. We're going to go to our number 4 here. This is our square, number 4. Again, try to center it as best you can. Now I'll be able to do 2 cuts on either side, 1 cut on either side, because 2 edges are showing. Again, line it up, number 4, trim. All right, ooh, it's getting pretty. So this is round 4. Next up is round 5, a light strip. Again, the same amount, 4 3/4. All right, here's my light strip. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is an odd number. We're going to line up our white line, our 45 degree line in the center. up against the bottom, the last row before this one. Center. You can see the lines are somewhat centered if the glare isn't too bad for you. And we'll cut. And there's round 5. I'm going to do round 6 a little quicker because, as you can see by my placement of the ruler, I tend to falter a little bit, but basically it's the same story. It's a 6, it's an even number, it uses a square, you line everything up, and then you cut your 4 sections or 4 sides. So we're going to speed it up in order to make this video less long. Round 7, another odd number. We line up that white line at the 45-degree angle, center it as best you can, and trim. Remember, we are putting that white line on the strip that was done previous to this round, just as in round 3 and 5. Going on our last round, we will center up the number 8 block in your center block, and we will trim all the way around. This is part 1 of a 2-part process for row number 8. Now that we've done the 4 units, we will line up our white line on the last row that we've done. This is the exception to the rule. I know it's an even number, but it is the white line on the even number, the last row, in order to trim it up, match it up, so that we can add our corner units on. Once that's done, we can square up the block and you'll be done. Okay, we've attached our corner units to each side, and now we have our ruler in place with the straight edges to make our 10-inch block. We have a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all sides. We're hoping that we did this right, so that's what we have. And we trim each side, turn it, and we'll trim it again. Looks like we got a good 1/4 inch on this one. There'll be no fudging in the assembly process at the end. And here we have it. Our final block. All done. Beautiful. Yay, we're done. And here they are in all their glory. Blocks 1 through 6 in the top row, 7 and 8 in the lower row, and a finished block. 7 and 8 are in the process. 8 is showing both the first step done, and then on the right side is showing that has had the second step done. So although it's a 2-step process, I'm showing you the difference in size between the first and the second. And there is the final block complete and ready to go in another quilt. As you can see, I have the opposites of colors so that when I do assemble them, they will form a pinwheel effect. Thank you very much for sticking with me all this time. I appreciate it.